He paid for a stranger's groceries at the supermarket. What happened next changed the lives of all three forever. Sebastian never forgot what he saw that Tuesday afternoon in the supermarket line. A young woman was holding a small child in her left arm, while, with her right hand, she emptied the last coins from her wallet onto the counter. Her fingers were trembling. She counted and counted the same coins again, as if the number might change if she arranged them differently. The little boy stared silently at the chocolates hanging near the register, but he didn't ask for anything. Sebastian noticed that detail. The child already knew he shouldn't ask. The woman looked up at the cashier with an expression Sebastian recognized immediately, the face of someone using every bit of strength not to break down in front of strangers. "How much am I short?" she asked, her voice steady. 42 pesos, ma'am." She took a can of lentils and a bag of rice, put them back without saying a word, and then looked directly into the cashier's eyes. "I promise I'll come back and pay when I can." It wasn't a plea. It was a promise. And it was that difference, that dignity, still intact in the middle of hardship, that made Sebastian step forward without thinking. "I'll pay for everything," he said, pulling out his wallet. That happened on a Tuesday. What came next changed the lives of all three forever. And neither of them saw it coming. If this story has already touched your heart from the very first words, stay until the end. Like this video now and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments what country you're listening from today. To understand who Sebastian was before that Tuesday, you have to understand what he was made of. He grew up in Mendoza, Argentina, in a home where money was never abundant, but work was never lacking either. His father was an accountant at a small wine export company, a quiet, methodical man who believed honesty was the one thing no one could take from you, even if they took everything else. His mother taught mathematics at the neighborhood high school and came home with her hands full of graded notebooks and her eyes full of stories about kids who were worth far more than the system believed. From both of them, Sebastian inherited something that doesn't come in any manual, the ability to see people before seeing their circumstances. To look at someone and wonder what they were carrying, not what they were showing. He studied civil engineering. He graduated in 5 years while working weekends at a hardware store, so he wouldn't have to ask his parents for more money. At 28, he founded a small construction company with a partner specializing in affordable housing. Not because it was the most profitable business, but because he had grown up in a neighborhood where he knew exactly what it meant to have a roof of your own. By 36, that company had become one of the strongest in the region, with projects in 4 provinces. But Sebastian still went to the same neighborhood supermarket, drove the same car he had owned for 8 years, and ate at the same places as always. Not because he couldn't change his life, but because the life he had felt like enough. What didn't feel like enough was the silence in his house when he came home at night. He had been married, Valeria, 6 years together, 4 of them as husband and wife. A relationship that, on paper, had everything a relationship is supposed to have, but in practice slowly emptied out. Like a swimming pool, with an invisible leak that no one fixes until one day there simply isn't enough water left. There was no big fight, no betrayal, no lie. Just 2 people growing in different directions until one day they looked at each other and realized they no longer knew how to speak to one another. The divorce was calm, civilized, the kind that hurts more because there is no one to blame. Valeria moved to Buenos Aires. Sebastian stayed in the same house, with the same furniture, and the same silence that filled every corner with an efficiency he never knew how to fight. He had friends. He had work that mattered to him. He had a life that, from the outside, seemed complete. But something was missing, something he didn't know how to name, something like the feeling that the best chapter had not yet begun. He didn't know that chapter would begin on an ordinary Tuesday in the line at a supermarket. The woman's name was Camilla. He learned that after paying, when they were already at the supermarket entrance with the bags in their hands, and the little boy staring at the parking lot with huge eyes, she turned around and told him her name with the same firmness with which she had made that promise at the register. "My name is Camila, and this is Mateo." She pointed to the boy, who looked up at Sebastian with that direct, unfiltered curiosity children have when they are 3 or 4 years old. "Sebastian," he replied. "Can you give me your number?" she asked before he could say anything else. "I'm going to pay you back as soon as I can. I don't know when, but I will." Sebastian wanted to tell her it wasn't necessary, but something in the way she said it, That determination that allowed no negotiation made him understand that insisting she didn't pay him back would take away something she needed more than the money. He gave her his card. She put it away as if it were an important document, thanked him with a small nod, took Matteo by the hand and left. Sebastian stood at the supermarket entrance, watching them walk away. Matteo turned his head once before rounding the corner and looked back at him. Then he disappeared. Sebastian went home, made coffee he didn't drink, tried to read something he couldn't focus on, and went to sleep thinking about a woman he had known for 10 minutes, who, somehow, had settled into a place in his mind, as if she had always been there. Don't leave. What comes next is the moment everything begins to change. If this story has already pulled you in, like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the end. 3 weeks passed. Sebastian didn't call. He didn't ask questions. He had her number on the card he had given her, but he didn't use it. Not because he didn't want to, but because he couldn't find the right reason that didn't sound like an excuse. And Sebastian was the kind of man who preferred to wait for an honest moment rather than invent a false one. That moment arrived on a Wednesday at noon, when his phone vibrated with an unknown number. Sebastian, it's Camilla. We met at the supermarket. He stood up from his chair without realizing it. I remember perfectly. How is Matteo? There was a brief pause, heavy with something he couldn't fully interpret. He's fine, thank you. His fever is completely gone now. Another pause. I saved up the money. Can we meet so I can give it back to you? Sebastian wanted to say it wasn't necessary, but he remembered the firmness with which she had asked for his number that afternoon, the way she had kept his card, and he understood that if he told her there was no need, he would be taking away something that, for her, did matter. Of course. Where would be good for you? They agreed to meet at a small cafe near the neighbourhood where Camilla lived. Sebastian arrived 10 minutes early, ordered 2 coffees, and waited while looking out the window at the quiet midday street. When he saw her turn the corner, with the same firm walk as the first time but without the rushed weight of that Tuesday, he felt something close to relief. Like when you remember you left something in a safe place, go back to find it, and it is still there. Camilla sat down, took an envelope from her purse and placed it on the table. I counted it 3 times. Nothing is missing. I believe you, Sebastian said, and put it away without opening it. She looked at him with an expression that mixed gratitude with something like the surprise of someone who wasn't used to being believed without first being checked. And Matteo? Sebastian asked. You didn't bring him? He's with my neighbour. On Wednesdays she helps me because I work late. What do you do? Camilla looked at him for a second, as if judging whether the question was genuine curiosity or the beginning of something she didn't want. Cleaning. I have 5 regular houses and some occasional jobs whenever they come up. Is it enough? It has to be enough, she answered simply, without bitterness and without complaint. It was a statement, not a lament. Sebastian looked at her. There was something in the way Camilla said things that forced him to pay attention. Not because she spoke in an extraordinary way, but because every word was exactly the one it needed to be, without decoration and without excuse. They talked for almost an hour. Camilla asked what he did for work. Sebastian told her he worked in construction, without going into detail. She didn't ask more. They talked about Matteo, the neighbourhood, and a park a few blocks away, where the boy went on Saturdays with the neighbour when Camilla had to work. Sebastian listened with the kind of attention that made people, without fully understanding why, want to keep talking. When they said goodbye at the cafe door, Camilla formally extended her hand. Thank you for everything. You don't have to thank me, he said. I do, she replied. Then she turned and walked toward the bus stop with that step Sebastian already recognised, straight, without fake hurry, but without unnecessary delay. He watched until she turned the corner, then he took out his phone and saved her number. Sebastian found an excuse a week later. He sent her a message asking if Matteo would like to go to the zoo the following weekend. He said he hadn't been in a long time and would rather go with company. Camilla took 40 minutes to reply. Sebastian checked his phone every 5 minutes during those 40 minutes, not recognising himself in that gesture. The answer came. Matteo had never been to a zoo. They went on a sunny Saturday. Matteo climbed into Sebastian's truck with the contained energy of someone who had been waiting for something for days and had finally reached the moment. During the whole ride, he talked non-stop about the animals he hoped to see, mixing up names, inventing others, asking whether lions slept or stayed awake all day. Sebastian answered everything with the seriousness Matteo expected, as if every question deserved real consideration. Camilla watched them from the passenger seat with an expression that tried to be neutral and didn't quite succeed. At the zoo, Matteo took Sebastian's hand with the naturalness of someone who had not yet learned that there are hands of strangers and hands of familiar people. There were only hands that were offered and hands that were not. Sebastian's was there, so he took it. They walked that way for a while, the boy in the middle, one hand in his mother's and the other in Sebastian's, chattering about every enclosure with the same intensity. Camilla said nothing about the gesture. Sebastian didn't either, but at some point their eyes met over Matteo's head, and they both smiled at the same time, for no specific reason. On the way back, Matteo fell asleep in the back seat, his face resting against the window. Sebastian drove. Camilla looked out at the landscape. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who no longer needed to talk all the time to feel accompanied. "Why are you doing this?" Camilla suddenly asked, without taking her eyes off the window. Sebastian took a second. "Doing what?" "This, the zoo, the coffees, the time." A pause. "You don't owe me anything, Sebastian." He thought before answering, and when he did, he chose the truth. "I'm not doing it because I owe you something. I'm doing it because ever since I saw the two of you, it's been hard not to wonder how you're doing." Camilla didn't answer right away. She kept looking out the window. Then, without turning, she said softly, "Matteo asked if you were coming back." Sebastian looked in the rearview mirror. The boy was asleep, his mouth slightly open and his brow relaxed like someone with no problems in the world. "And what did you tell him?" "I told him I didn't know." "And now?" Camilla turned her head and looked at him for the first time since they had started talking. "Now I still don't know, but I'd like to know. If this story is making you feel something, write the word return in the comments. And subscribe now, because what happens in the final act is the moment no one expects." The following months built something that neither of them named for a long time, because sometimes the realest things are the ones we are most afraid to name. Sebastian began showing up on Saturdays with a regularity that Matteo started to accept as part of the natural order of the world, like breakfast or the afternoon bus. He took the boy to the park, to the neighbourhood fair, to an ice cream shop where Matteo always ordered the same flavour, even though he looked at all the others for 5 minutes. Sometimes Camilla went with them. Sometimes she waited at home and opened the door when they came back with ice cream-stained hands and energy only slightly lower than when they had left. One Saturday, while Matteo was taking a nap, Camilla and Sebastian drank mate in the small kitchen of her apartment. It was the first time Sebastian had been in her home. There were photos on the refrigerator, Matteo at different ages, always with the same expression of wonder he had before anything new. A photo of Camilla with an older woman who looked like her. "My mother," Camilla said, following his gaze. "She died 2 years ago." "I'm sorry." "She was the only family Matteo and I had." A pause. Matteo's father was never around. Sebastian didn't ask anything else. There was no need. "And you?" Camilla asked. "Do you have family?" "My parents in Mendoza, a brother. I was married. Children." Sebastian drank his mate slowly. "No, I couldn't have them." He paused briefly. "It's a medical condition. I found out a few years ago." Camilla looked at him in silence. She didn't say, "I'm sorry." She didn't say that must be difficult. She didn't say any of the phrases people say when they don't know what to say, but feel they have to say something. She just looked at him, and in that silence there was something worth more than any sentence. "Did it hurt you a lot?" she finally asked softly. "Yes," Sebastian answered with his usual calm. "For a while I thought it meant certain chapters of life were not meant for me. And now?" He looked toward the hallway where Matteo's bedroom door was half open, and the peaceful breathing of the sleeping child could be heard. "Now I think chapters don't always begin the way we imagine, but that doesn't mean they aren't real." Camilla placed the kettle on the counter. She looked at him for a long second. "Sebastian, I have to tell you something I should have told you before." He waited. "I know who you are. Not from the first day, but since the 3rd week. One of the women I work for lives in the same building as one of your partners, and one day they mentioned you." She paused. "I know what you build. I know the size of what you have." The silence that followed was different from all the others. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Sebastian asked. Because I was afraid you would think I cared because of that. She lowered her eyes. And also because I was afraid it might be true, that without meaning to I might care because of that. And do you? Camilla looked up. No, and it took me weeks to understand that with certainty. That's why I'm saying it now, and not before. Sebastian stayed silent for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me. Are you angry? No. A pause. I'm thinking of something I want to say, and I'm choosing the words. Camilla waited. I went to speak with a lawyer who specializes in adoption, Sebastian said. 3 months ago, before knowing whether this, he gestured gently to the space between them, was going to become something. Because regardless of what happened, I wanted to understand whether it was a possible path for me. Camilla stared at him without speaking. They told me that adoption processes involving a stable father figure and a mother who already has a bond with the child can follow a different path. He paused. I am not proposing anything we haven't talked about. I'm saying that if one day you wanted Matteo to have that, I want to be that figure. The silence that came afterward was the longest of the afternoon. Outside, a bus passed by on the street. Inside, the mate grew cold without either of them noticing. It was Matteo who broke the silence, appearing in the kitchen doorway with messy hair and eyes still half closed from sleep, looking for his mother with the calm certainty of someone who knows she will always be there. Mum, is Sebas staying for dinner? Camilla looked at Sebastian. Sebastian looked at Matteo. Then he looked at Camilla. If your mum wants me to, he answered. Camilla took exactly 2 seconds. Yes, Matteo, he's staying. Today, when someone asks Sebastian what moment made him understand his life had changed forever, he doesn't mention the lawyer's papers, or the day Camilla told him she knew who he was, or even that first Saturday at the zoo. He mentions that ordinary Tuesday in the supermarket line, when a 4-year-old boy silently looked at chocolates he wasn't going to ask for, and something inside Sebastian moved in a direction he could no longer turn back from. Because sometimes life doesn't arrive with an announcement. It arrives in the supermarket line, with counted coins on a counter and a promise spoken with dignity. And if you are still enough to listen, it changes everything. If this story touched your heart, write family in the comments. And if you believe Sebastian made the right decision, write yes along with it, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. Because every week we share stories that remind you that the best chapters in life often begin where you least expect them. The next story will surprise you even more.